Good morning, everybody, and welcome back again to the Steps to Soul podcast. Today, we're talking post-sale regret, how to exit on your terms without looking back. So, Chris, too often, too many business owners walk away from what is a good, successful sale. And a lot of times they get regret a few months later. Why could that be the case? We're going to unpack all those different things. And not because it's a bad deal, but there's also a whole bunch of factors that owners don't often consider when working through the process of a deal and the strain and the energy of a deal that they don't always either plan enough for in advance or think about post-sale is what they want to do. So to prevent you out there from listening from second guessing your post-sale life, we're here to talk about that. Chris, how are you doing today?
Doing well. How about you?
Oh man, we're alive and well. About to go to the beach this week, out with the family, one last vacation before school starts, all the good stuff. And hopefully share some good knowledge today with you and you with myself.
You decided
So on that note,
it wasn't hot enough. You had to go someplace hotter.
Absolutely, especially with two children under 4 years old. Yeah, I'm just gonna embrace the heat.
There you go.
Hopefully the sand doesn't kill us, but we shall see. We're very excited to go back. That being said, hey, we see all the time. We get a deal done. Owners expect Y. They get X. Sometimes they didn't think about it, didn't prepare. We do our best to prep everybody. But here are some things that we want you out there listening to think about that we can help you with, but also prepare yourself because there's 1,000 angles to every deal. And it's very hard to cover them all today. But we're going to cover the ones that I think matter and impact you as a seller. And also as a buyer, keep this in mind. This is important for you too, because what you structure affects this. And if you want a good relationship with that seller post sale, including these issues and addressing them is going to help you maintain that relationship. Like we always talk about, Chris, maintaining the relationship and the value of the transaction. If those two things go well, very often a deal is much more fruitful for both parties down the road. So first off, let's talk about what causes post-sale regret. I think the number one issue that us as brokers see that most people don't understand or don't consider, especially owners, is the emotional disconnect. If that business has been your life for 30 years, right? And you've been there, it's part of your identity. You've got social relationships with the workers, their families. Walking away is hard because you're walking away from a social network, right? You're walking away from your day-to-day. If you've done the same thing for 30 years, the same thing, and one day it's not there, that's tough. We hear all the time, people don't know what to do with their time, right? I mean, we see owners that are ready to sell, get to the closing table and go, well, what am I going to do with my free time? Well, you haven't thought about that?
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, absolutely. The business gave that person, the business owner, structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Woke up every day, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, whatever it is, head to the office. Yeah, exactly. They had that. They had community. They had their clients and their vendors, and that was their community for that business. They had purpose, right? They knew why they were getting up in the morning. Selling your business, whether you're going to stay around for a little bit or not, that changes overnight, right? You're no longer the person out there in charge. You may be still going into the office for a while, but exactly, you had it. You nailed it when you said they didn't realize it. They had no vision for what it looked like post sale. They just knew they wanted out. It'd been 20 years. They were burned out. So whatever the case may be of why you sold your business, you had no vision about what was going to come after. You were chasing a number. What do I need to get to my number? Instead of chasing that vision, you need to have that plan. You need to almost have a business plan for what you're going to do after, right?
You're not wrong. I mean, and that leads to the next major issue we see is, I guess for lack of better words, financial dissatisfaction. If you don't plan in advance, like we talk about all the time, to get your stuff orderly, to get the best possible price, you can't be mad at the closing table when you get what's available to you. And a lot of times owners think, man, I should have waited and got more. I should have done this. You can't second guess what buyers are out there. Very often, you may only get one or two very good buyers to buy your company. You may only get one or two good shots to sell it. And you can't sit there and think, what if? Because I see that all the time. Owners, well, what if I get another offer? What if I get this? You're right. You might, you may not. I can't promise that. No one can. But what I can tell you is if you are so scared about not making the right price, then you need to sit back, don't go to the market, meet with us and say, okay, if I know for a fact $2 million, I have to have it, and I'm not going to get there, what do we do? And I think so often owners just think, oh, I'm just going to get my number. The broker told me that, but I'm going to get my number. And then we get to the table and they go, you were right. It was only 1.5. It wasn't 2 million. We told you. We did the valuation. We showed you the comps. I don't want you to feel you got cheated, but you've got to know what the reality of what's going to be presented to you that's actually obtainable. And I think so often owners wait 30 years to get their payout. It's not there. It's just how often we don't see it a lot. Most owners are happy to get the deal they get done. But you can't hope for imaginary money, right, Chris? You can't hope it's just going to get a payout just to get a payout.
No, if your business is worth $1 million or $2 million, you can't think, oh well, if I'd only gotten $5 or $10 million, something crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You got to plan that well in advance. What's that number going to look like? What am I going to be satisfied with? And then what am I going to do after? I want to go back to one point. I've seen this happen: selling under pressure. And by pressure,
Yes.
I mean whether you're burnout, you've got health issues, you're having conflict with your partners. You know what that
Divorce.
does to, yeah, all that stuff. That clouds why you're selling your business, first of all, because you just know you want out. But it mainly clouds what's going to happen after, because all you're thinking about is getting that business sold, right? You want to get that done to get out of that conflict or in that part of your whatever is going on. And now you have no plan. That's going to cause the biggest regret. And I will tell you, you got to get yourself to where you've got this plan after.
You're right. And we'll talk a little bit too about, you mentioned getting rushed, preparing your tax strategies, preparing the way your step out is. We see people come to us, they're tired, I'm done. And they have yet to strategically plan for that income coming in from the sale and how it's going to be taxed, distributed, if they've got partners, allocations. You've got to be prepared for that. And that's one of the easiest things to do. And I think too is also one to be important, want to work. Some people retire, they sell the company, they want to retire and be done. Other people want to work. And we'll get more into why that's important to consider and how to avoid that issue. Because if you sell a company, you're going to have to sign non-compete unless you work for the company post-sale or a subsidiary buys you out. You need to figure that out. Because if you want to stay busy but not be an owner, there's going to be often limitations on that. So you need to be, if you're going to stay in the exact industry, right? So you need to be prepared for that. And we'll talk a little bit how to avoid that next. Because like a lot of good owners, they love the industry. Sometimes they just don't want to be the owner anymore, but they still want to do those projects. Well, that's going to come at a cost. So, how to avoid regret. We just kind of mentioned some things you hinted at, pre-planning before the sale. So let's start right there. One, we kind of said it earlier, define your life goals early post-sale. Do you want to work? Do you want to be retired? Do you even want to be involved in the business post-sale, but not be the owner, but maybe have a small role in business development or training or have a niche, right? How many of those have we put together where an owner stays on with a small equity portion to have a role for a couple of years to finally phase out where, hey, I don't want to quit working, but I can't run this, or I've limited my scale of management and capital I'm willing to put in at 60 years old, but I still want to be there to help somebody get to the goals I know this company can reach, right? Thinking strategically like that allows you when the right buyer comes along to really execute a good deal for your exit.
Yeah, I've got a client that I'm working with right now, just started. He's been planning this. It's perfect. He's 58 years old. He wants out. He's been kind of setting this up. He plans to stay on. He wants to stay in the business for 2, 3, maybe even another 5, 10 years. He's not burnt out on that. He just wants to, he's done everything he can. He doesn't want to invest in marketing and advertising and hiring new people, but he's making a killing. He's doing like $2.6 million in revenue, $500,000 in profit. He's made his money, but he doesn't want to stop working. He still loves what he's doing. He loves his clients. So he's putting this all in motion. And that goes to my point. Exit planning starts years in advance, right? So even if we don't find a buyer for the next year, he's fine. He has started this. He hasn't gotten to the point where he's burnt out and needs to be gone yesterday. So it's not just about timing the market. It's about timing yourself too. Where are you at in your life and your goals? Because your valuation isn't just math. It needs to be tied to your expectations, your future, and how the business can do without you. All those things play a part. And who can help you with that? Business brokers. We've been there. We've seen it. We've seen the bad side. We've seen the good side. So you got to have somebody in your corner helping you sell your business who isn't emotionally tied to the business, who can give you the advice without being clouded from all these other things you may be experiencing with your business and your personal life.
You're not wrong. You make a great point about having a team together. You mentioned our roles in the transaction. Let's talk about the other parties that may be involved, whether it's a good CPA, a good financial planner, even attorney. We'll get some of their roles more discreetly later. But let's talk about, and I talked to a private wealth management company. I spoke at their group a couple months ago. I met one of their guys the other day. We're just chit-chatting. Lifestyle is a word I don't think owners think about. The business funds your lifestyle often. When that business is sold, like for example, I spoke to a company out of Florida, 3 family members working it full time. They're throwing off 400 SD, great business, but they are the business. And it's able to fund their travel, all their meals, living a good life, right? Great. But they realize that day is coming, but it's not really transferable because they haven't prepared it to sell yet. And we get an evaluation, told them, look, you're at X. If you fix these problems, you can sell for 2 to 3 times more just by getting it restructured, having a plan. And I said, you'll obviously live a certain lifestyle the company funds. If you sell, is that money allocated from the sale going to fund that lifestyle 3 years in advance, right? Is it going to go 4, 5, 6 years? Having that right professional to manage that money and help you prepare alongside getting the proper sale price and prepping the business allows you to live the lifestyle you've been living and maintain it. And I think that's very important because owners realize when they go to sell, man, that 400 or 500 grand I made a year is gone. I've spent 100 grand a year living a certain lifestyle, just going on vacations because the company subsidized part of it. Now that's gone. Can I afford my camp down in Chauvin or my condo in New Orleans or my beach house in Florida without that extra income paying off all my different debts, right? It's so important to understand your financial implications of what you're funding and know why what you're going to use it for. If not, you're just selling, hoping to then figure out with this lump sum of cash what to do. And often that doesn't work.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I remember you telling me the story about those owners, and it confuses me why people like that want to sell. I feel like you're going to have immediate post-sale regret when the sale doesn't even make sense. I
Yep,
feel like they're just selling because they're doing all the work and they don't know how to allocate. They don't know how to manage or hire new people to bring
that's
in
correct.
and set that support staff up. So if that's kind of your reason for selling is that you just want to be done, you don't want to hire people because of,
XYZ.
yeah, if the business sale doesn't make sense to a broker, you really need to take a look and say, what am I doing? Should I go a different direction, or maybe you just need to change life goals and stuff. But yeah, selling a business that's not sellable, that always confuses me.
And that's exactly what I told them. And they were like, no, we're realistic and we appreciate the honesty. Because I told them, I said, right now, 400 or 500 best case, maybe 550. You fix this thing up, you can get 1 to 1.2, 1.3 million. And in a year or two, you can do that if you really get into it and make an effort to make those real changes. And I said, why throw 30 years of hard work down the drain? And I said, I do better when you do better. I could say, yeah, I'll take it right now, but it's going to be a limited buyer market and it's going to be hard. Straight up. That's the hard part. And I told him too, let's talk about post life. And I said, if y'all love what you've done it for 30 years, are you sure you want to be out of the industry? Because let's be honest, I mentioned non-competes earlier. You're going to have to sign one. And one way to avoid these other implications is understanding your deal responsibility and deal structure, but using the right advisor. Understanding how, if you do a seller note or an earn out, how that's going to play out. Don't just go along because you hope to get the money. Understand what it's going to take to make sure you get those payments, how they're allocated, and why that's important. Because so often I see owners get presented deals off market, and they're like, oh, it sounded great in theory. But I never really understood until I sold the company that they kind of had more leverage than I thought. And they kind of had more discretion than I thought to pay me back. And they kind of have more discretion on clawbacks. You need to understand that because that's going to implicate you post sale. Don't just sign any document, get to closing, don't have an attorney review it. And then that buyer gets in there and a year later claws back $500,000 on equipment because you didn't get it properly certified. No, that's not your responsibility. That's their responsibility. But if you don't have the right team in place to protect yourself in these conditions, you can get taken advantage of, or worse, just not understand what's in front of you. How many times have we seen sellers bring in their family attorney, right? Who's been there 40 years, been the family attorney, has never really done a business transaction and gets overwhelmed by the deal structure, especially these bigger deals that we do. They can't give you good advice, don't understand it. And that doesn't mean they're a bad attorney. But you need a specialist in that field who does business transactions, who understands that to make sure you understand what you're signing and not walking into a trap. I interviewed a guy who wanted to do a job, work for us in Florida last week. And he said, yeah, my dad knew a company in town. I won't say the city, but it's in Louisiana. He's from here, general area. He's like, yeah, another shop did this, got a seller note. The guy defaulted, they lost everything. I was like, well, I bet you whatever documents they signed didn't have clawbacks and personal guarantees and protections to protect the owner. Now they've got nothing, right, Chris?
Yeah.
It's like, please get the right team so you don't have post-sale regret like that.
Yeah, hiring the wrong attorney will definitely give you post-sale regret when the problems start arising and your representations and warranties and everything that you said was going to happen after the sale or everything that you certified starts going
Or
wrong.
thought you understood even.
Yeah, that there's some real regret.
And it happens too often. Good lawyers are worth their weight. I know people get a little frustrated with lawyers, but in this situation, you want the right protections. And also understanding there's going to have to be some give and take there too as a seller. So this is not all just one-sided here. You have to give the buyer something to get something in return. So let's talk about that. Now we kind of talk about negotiating. Let's talk about structuring the sale so it helps match what you want for your exit vision. We talked a little bit about it, but earlier, is this a full sale? Where as a seller, you're leaving right away because you're that burnt out? Or like one of your clients you're working with where, hey, I'd like a phased exit where I divest a majority of the company, have a role, but can go forward. Now, as an owner, you got to think about this. Can you ego check yourself? If you're no longer in charge, can you step back and allow this buyer to run? Or are you going to be, micromanaging that buyer when it's not your company anymore? Are you able to do it? You have to look in the mirror and understand that. Is your team going to allow you to hand the baton off? Or are you so invested as the owner running that business that they're only going to look to you? Those are things to consider in walking away. Prepping your team, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, and you're going to know exactly where I'm going with this, Chris. You do not need to be the most important person in the business. Am I right?
That's exactly right.
And here's where having that team allows you to be in a phased exit, but also not be stuck at the chair long term.
Yeah. And I would say, most people that I talked to early before I've had a chance to coach them, I'd say half of them want to be out the day they sell, right? Or maybe 30 days.
You have to do training transition. You have to be ready for that.
Absolutely. And so I'd say a clean break like that isn't always the best break. You need to structure the deal around what matters to you most. And one of the things I always hear, probably 100% from the people I help, the business owners, the sellers, their employees matter to them. They're like family. Legacy
social
matters.
Network.
Yeah, the legacy matters to them. They want to make sure that their business name and their name in the business continues. So I have this point. Selling to the highest bidder, it might feel a little bit hollow if your team or brand is going to take a hit. If you are going to be out the door the day you sell or 30 days after you sell, because what's going to happen to your team? They're going to feel betrayed. So some sellers, they do want to stay involved for continuity, but we talk about regret. You got to stay in there so there's no regret on your part. I didn't leave too fast after the sale. My employees don't feel regret for me selling. They don't feel like, hey, they're looking at me and like, where'd he go? He just sold yesterday and now he's already gone. So you need to think like that. So terms like transition periods and staff retention and brand continuity, all those things matter. All those things matter, and they're part of what will alleviate you feeling regret. You want to have that vision that I talked about earlier, but you also want to leave under the proper guidelines and not leaving, just to be in a hurry out the door.
You're not wrong. And I have a great anecdotal story for that. That sums a lot of that up. I sold an HVAC right after COVID here in the Metro BR area. And the owner had two buyers. I think I've told some of the story, but let's give more context as it kind of applies more here today. Two buyers, one industry experience, one not. The one about the industry experience was bringing in a manager that the owner straight up said, I don't think that guy can run my operation the way they run it over there. He'll run my guys off. That buyer with that manager he wanted to bring in with no industry experience, the buyer per se, wanted to buy business and property. It was a greater sum of the value of the transaction, right? The other buyer was in the industry and told him, look, I know how to run a shop. You know that. You know what? I don't even need you post-close. Just hand me the keys, introduce me that day, and you can move out of state. I'm good. I know what I'm doing. I don't need you to hang around and be an influence on these guys. I know a lot of them already from in the industry. Your workers will be okay. And the owner took less money because of that. No training transition, confidence, and got to walk, which was still a very good deal for him and his family. That matters. And that's a great example of what it was. Before it was, do I like this? Do I not like this? I believe that guy's going to get it done. I know I can hand the keys to him, and I'm not going to be getting phone calls and training for the next 6 to 8 months to a year, and know my guys are going to be taken care of. And that matters.
Yeah, take care of the employees.
It does. And that kind of leads, to kind of one thing I want to challenge you as an owner. What role do you want post-close? We talked about phased exit, full exit. You need to fully identify what your role in the company is now. You need to be very hard on yourself and identify what you really do that maybe no one else can do. And if not, how is that going to transfer and how you need to be involved? Because like you said, Chris, you want to clean Blake and walk, but you're the estimator. You're the pricing guy that goes out and does the bidding. You have the knowledge. You can't do that unless someone coming in is an absolute expert in that field. And even then, you need to be around to share that knowledge. If you're not willing to do that, you're not ready to sell. And what's going to happen is you're going to go to market. And if you price it right, you're going to get offers. And you're going to blow those people off. And you're going to lose them. And then a year, 2, 3 later, you want to go back to market. The same people are going to say, that guy's unrealistic. That seller isn't serious. That seller isn't ready to walk away. And you're not going to have a bigger pool of buyers to pick from, and it's going to hurt your chances. I stress that to everyone listening. You need to know what your time and role is worth and know how that's going to be a little different for every buyer as well. Every buyer coming in may have a different background, ability, and funding. So be a bit flexible, but know where your core strengths are and how that's going to impact the company post-sale and how you want it to help your people and the new buyer. Because if the buyer's happy, you're happy, the employees are happy, that's a very good marriage into the future. Otherwise, you're going to be getting phone calls every other day. Well, you didn't tell me this. You didn't do that. Your employees hate me. Well, you ran off on them. What do you expect, right? I'd be mad if my boss walked out on me and I was working somewhere and was loyal for 25 years and didn't get a notification, right? How would you feel? It's tough. And often employees don't know till the sale closes, which is the hardest part because then they get shocked. But you have to maintain confidentiality. It's to catch-22 to the style of the nature of the beast. So let's talk a little post-close reality, life after the deal. You've gone to the closing table. You've done the deal. You've gone through some deal fatigue. Every deal has it. You've signed the paperwork. Did you fully agree to a proper training transition timeline? I think that's the one spot so many deals fail, is fully understanding from both sides what that role is going to be, right? How often do we see owners think, well, I told my month's up and I'm gone. Well, were you there every day? Well, no, I missed 2 days because I was sick. So are you going to make it up to the guy? Like, as an owner, make sure you are very clear what you're willing to do and agree to post-sale transition, especially if you're training. And don't be greedy, expecting to get paid your full salary to do it, because that's absurd. I see that way too often. How about you?
Yeah, I usually try to coach my clients that we're going to give the buyer 30 days. It comes in with the asking price, training and transition. And most people are good with that. It's
Yeah,
after the 30 days of what they usually want. You know, I've got some sellers who they do want that full salary. They want to make $150,000 a year if the buyer wants to keep them on after 30 days. And for sometimes that may be legitimate, right? That actually works out. But sometimes the buyer just wants some coaching after. They want to know that
that's
they've
right.
got a consultant if they need to call you. Usually we work out an hourly rate, minimum an hour,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. There's all kinds of different ways. There's no one way to do that, right? But
That's right.
having that kind of those ideas of what you're willing to do
Mm-hmm.
will be, we're talking about alleviating regret. Knowing what you want going into the deal will help whether you agree to it or not. Otherwise, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be kind of something that's forced by the buyer on you. And yeah, it's not what I really wanted to do after the sale. I didn't want to be around 40 hours a week for the next 6 months, even if I'm getting paid. That's not what the plan was. So it goes
Mm-hmm.
back to that vision. The other thing I would tell you is life slows down fast after the sale. I think a
Yes.
lot of people that contact me, sometimes they're not really ready to sell. They want to start the process, but they don't see how quickly, sometimes quickly, we can work. I can find a buyer in 90 days. Deal's going to take a little bit longer, but
Mm-hmm.
some buyers, I've gotten a few clients, they weren't ready for it. They're like, "Whoa, this is going a little fast.
Well, I
You
thought I had
need
another 6 months to figure this out. It's like, no, here's the offer.
Yeah,
Are
exactly.
you ready to rock and roll, right?
Right. And so they're not prepared, even if they're going to stick around for a little bit for that training transition. They're not prepared for how life may slow down pretty fast after the sale. The first few weeks after you sell your business, they may feel like a vacation. Yeah, you get 2, 3 weeks off. But after that, that's when you needed to have that plan of what's next. And you need to be ready to implement that.
You're right. And especially, let's talk about this kind of avenue. We didn't discuss it enough. If you've got family working in the business too, because you've got to consider how that's going to implicate them, as well as, do they want the business? Are they capable of running the business? Do they own a percentage of ownership? So often we get calls where, hey, dad owns this, son has a small percentage, other son has a small percentage, but dad wants to sell. Well, how important are these sons in the business or daughters? Like, are they going to be a monkey wrench? Have you had this honest discussion with them? I know that you don't want them to know, but let's be honest. If dad sells the company, walks in one day and says, by the way, John and Jane, I sold the company for $3 million. You now work for this guy. Like, you need to make sure that if there are key people in the family involved, that they understand what's going on. Now, you need to address it at the appropriate time, and we can help you with that. But if they're not going to be on board, or there's going to be resistance, that needs to be addressed and outlined thoroughly before. Because if you don't tell them and the buyer doesn't know that, and the buyer gets through the deal and finds out they're completely sabotaging him, your butt's going to get dragged in for a lot longer, and possible risk too, legal risk. You need to have it. It's hard to have those conversations. It's one of those life moments where you go, I really don't want to go do that, but you need to have that conversation and at least address the elephant in the room and be prepared. I've had some parents have children leave the business because of that beforehand, which is good. Get out now if that's the case. Don't do it post-sale and hurt the business. But at the same time, if you are not calculating all these different factors, they're going to play a role. And emotionally, they're going to wear you down, where when it's time to work on the deal, you're not going to be able to get the deal done because you've got your wife breathing down your throat, your kids breathing down your throat. Maybe you don't want to let someone down, so then you back off a deal and you miss your opportunity to sell because you didn't have that prep before and you don't get that second chance. I see that way too often too. That is the hardest part.
You got to have conversations with family, even if it's son, daughter, wife, close immediate family, or outliers that work in the family, whether you got a brother or a sister. I've had all kinds of family that work in the businesses I work with. One recently, he contacted me 2 years ago. His son works in the business. They knew the son would never take over because he's got some personal stuff that he has to take care of with nothing bad.
Nothing bad, but just other things going on in his life.
He's got children he's got to attend to. And so this conversation started 2 years ago, and that was my first conversation after he told me his son worked in the business. Well, does he know you're thinking about selling the business? No, we're not ready to have that conversation with him yet. And so you have to do that before we move forward.
You do.
And I basically wouldn't let him move forward. He wanted to list the business. He was ready. In fact, if I had thrown it up on our website, he probably would have been fine with it. But I was like, you've got to do this. It was a year later. We had conversation, text, me checking in, and emails back and forth. Yeah. But it was a year later, April of this last year, that he finally sat down and had the conversation with the son and said, hey, we're thinking about doing this. We're getting close to 70. We really want to move forward with this. We'd like your blessing. Everything was fine. And it alleviated that concern. It alleviated that regret.
Took
that
stress
he might have had
off their mind.
Yeah. Now you can move forward and you don't have to worry about telling your son one day, hey, I sold the company. Sorry, we didn't have a conversation. You talk about causing some family strife there. So yeah, have those conversations with family. Be open to this. You've got to do that before you move forward in the steps of selling your business.
You're absolutely right. And every owner that gets into business knows one day you have to get out of business. And I believe I've said that before on the podcast, but I'll reiterate that again today. You need to have a plan. You need documentation in place. You need strategies prepared for when that time does come, and think it through. It may be, hey, look, I own 70%. My partner owns 10. My other partner owns 20. I want to go out one day. They want to stay. We've got to operate an agreement in place, how to handle that if that goes about. A lot of times we're talking as if the deal's already done. Sometimes you got to think about before the deal even gets started. Do you have procedures and agreements in place to manage parts of the company if you want to leave or someone else wants to leave? Maybe post-sale regret is not even you leaving the company, but your partner's leaving. Do you have an operating agreement in place that allows you to conduct a proper exit? Do you know how you're going to fund it? Have you structured the business where it can be sold even? Or if the partner one day does want to leave, you can make it happen. My dad and his partner didn't have that. And it was a fight. It was tough. It was ugly. And I hate to see that. And I've seen people come to us where they don't have a plan for that. And now partner A wants out, partner B doesn't, but they need to sell the company because they don't get along. We saw one end up in a jurisdiction of the courts. We were appointed as an agent to handle it. Like, it got so bad they couldn't even be in the room together. The court ordered liquidation of the company.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. How much value is probably lost there because of the inability to work together and get stuff signed up, right? It's not having those T's crossed and I's dotted. And I would say if you're going to exit with intention, not because of exhaustion. The best time to think about post-sale regret is before the sale, and cover your basis points. If you haven't heard us say enough today, start planning now, or at least considering what those deal structure opportunities might look like, how you're going to use the funds, understand your taxes, understand if your company's in a certain type of corporation, you need to talk to your accountant about what that is going to do for your sale post-close. Or if you've got a lot of trailing AR, trailing AP, other liabilities, knowing how that's going to affect your closing costs too. I think far too often owners think, I'm going to get my lump sum, and they forget, well, I owe a couple $100,000 on the building. Well, I fully depreciated that equipment last year. I got to pay back that depreciation. Well, I forgot I was a C Corp. That $2 million just turned into $1 million, if not less. Even though you're worth $2 million, but by the time you pay off your liabilities and all your other expenses, that can happen. So knowing that, being prepared, having the right team, as part of my final takeaways is knowing how to set all that up correctly and then just be understanding of what that is. A lot of it's generic insight, but a lot of it's also strategic insight by preparing that 3 years in advance, like we talked about the books, getting these other parts correct. It's going to be easier also to identify the buyer when the right buyer comes. And let's talk about that a little bit before we wrap this thing up. By getting everything in lined up, you kind of, like you go out when you want to date someone, you kind of know what you're looking for. You have a vision. But if you've never thought about what the core values you want in that partner in life, it's going to be hard to find the right person. But if you sat there and got your plan, you know what you're looking for, it's easier to spot it when it comes in the door or when opportunity strikes. You may not be maybe ready to sell, but maybe a strategic buyer comes in and says, hey, look, we really want to be in your market. I'm willing to pay for it. If you had things prepared, set up, you don't rush through the deal and miss out an opportunity and then have regrets. It was, nope, I was ready for this day to show up. I sold for the right price. I had my team ready and I executed. And yeah, I didn't want to maybe retire right away, but I got exactly what I needed to be happy. And I can go figure out the rest, right?
Yeah, exiting your business isn't the end, right? A lot of people kind of treat it like that or see it like that, but it's a pivot point in your life. You need to treat it like that. You've spent years, decades building something. Now you need to invest the same time, the same thoughtfulness into what's coming next. Whether you're going to fully retire, but be able to enjoy that retirement. Don't just say I'm going to retire and I don't know what's coming next. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what I'm going to do every day. You need to have that lined out. I don't know if that means talking to a life coach or somebody sometime.
No, yeah, I mean, there's
actually guys that have nothing. They don't know what they're going to do next. It's like
that's right.
I had one seller. He was going to dirt bike. That's going to last for a little while. You're 65 years old.
You only play so much golf.
Exactly.
It's true.
Yeah, you got to come up with those plans. Otherwise, you are going to have that feeling of what's next. So, I will say this: no one regrets selling a business that they were mentally, emotionally, and financially ready to sell.
Yes.
If you've got all those three things ready, you're prepared. There's not going to be much room for regret, but you've got to have that work done before you go into the sale.
You're absolutely correct. And it's okay to wonder if that's there or not. We're here to help. We're here to walk you through that process because we know as a broker, if you're not really ready, we're really better off not taking you to market because quite frankly, you're not going to pull the trigger when the right deal's there. And that's going to cost you more. We see it time and time again. Owners, I need to get my max price. They turn down 2 or 3 really good offers. 2 years later, well, we haven't sold. Well, 3 good offers came across the table. They all got turned down. It's hard to get a buyer to say he's turned down full price offer. Now he wants above asking price. Like,
you must be talking about my previous deal.
We've all had those deals, Chris. And those are the hard ones.
Yeah.
One, it also puts egg on our face. Let's be a little coy here. It does. It makes us look bad. And it's very hard to get people. If people can't trust us, they're not going to trust you too. So we're working on your behalf to get out there and put a proper foot forward. And if you're not giving us the full facts and we make representations and we get a right buyer and then you change those terms, that's just really, really, really bad for you long term because you've lost opportunity now. Straight up, you have.
Yeah, and I think you've learned as well as I have, if there's 2 partners in the business, a broker needs to have a very candid conversation with them.
Both.
Are
not
both,
just one, with both.
Yeah, are both of you absolutely ready to sell? And I think mine would have told me they were, but obviously when you bring them in a full price offer and the price goes up from there, that shows you that the one partner
wasn't really not ready
to sell. The price keeps going higher and higher, and you can never get what they want. That's kind of a sign right there that not ready to sell, and obviously going to have some huge regrets because you weren't ready to sell in the first place.
No, you're right. We see that too often. Like I tell my guys when someone calls in looking to sell, and there's multiple people, who's on the LLC? Make sure everybody involved, even if they don't have majority shares on board, because they may not be able to stop the sale, but they can make it very difficult and cost a sale. We had one, it was a daycare, multiple locations in the area. 3 partners signed the listing agreement. 1 would not. And we said, we're not moving forward because that one partner is going to cause a fit down the road and blow up a deal. We're here to another firm, did it, and they tried to pull us down at the table where they said, we're not paying you. I never agreed. I'm not authorizing the sale, blah, 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 blah. Even with an operating agreement in place, still tried to blow a deal up and cost everybody all their time and effort. I don't need that. And if you're those kind of sellers, listen to this podcast, do not call me. Do not call Chris. Go do your own deals. If you're going to act like that, no one wants to do business with you anyway. That gets around. That being said, everybody needs to be on the same page. It doesn't mean they always agree on the exact amount. It doesn't mean there's not some negotiation to be done. But if the team's not there, it really puts a damper. Now, sometimes life happens, you have to sell. And those guys are going to have to get on board. But it's better to have had those conversations a year, 2 or 3 in advance, planting those seeds as a seller, having those thoughts like, hey, but you do want to sell one day. How do we want to do it? Because if you don't, and then one day you wake up and you're done and they're not, that's another battle you got to fight before you even get to the real battle, which is getting the thing sold. So don't lose out because of that. All we're saying is be prepared, do your homework, listen to the podcast, and be super prepared because we got you. Any other takeaways, Chris? I think we covered a lot today. I feel like we gave everybody a great insight. If you listened and you apply what we told you, you're going to get a better value for your business. But have we missed anything or any final takeaways? You said, hey, look, Brandon, great idea, bad idea. Let me tell you something.
No, just decrease the chance of regret after your sale because you only get one shot at this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Decrease the chance of regret by planning. Having that vision. What does it look like after I sell? Write it out. Write it out like a business plan. Make sure that you're going to go execute something, whether it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be more work, but make sure you've got that plan. So after you sell, you know, hey, this is the next chapter. This is the pivot point.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I'm going to next.
That's right. I think that's so important in getting everything and everybody on board. And if you've done that, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier. And on that note, we appreciate all of you out there listening. As always, you're welcome to call, comment, question, email. I don't care. Contact us. We're happy to help, happy to talk. We love your input. We love your insights. And we would love to have some questions one day as a group. Get a couple good ones around and we'll answer them for you. So if you're out there listening and you want to know some specific stuff that we haven't covered, shoot us a DM, shoot us a text, whatever. We're here. We love to chat, love to help, love to share. And on that note, I am Brandon Bourgeois. That is Christopher Sater himself. We will see you next week on the Steps to Soul podcast.